You're watching Times XP. My name is Driti Atri, and here are the biggest stories that are making headlines across the globe today. So let's start with it. Donald Trump claims that the US nuked Iran's nuclear site. That's right. He asserts that the US strike it destroyed 3 Iranian nuclear facilities with unmatched precision. He says that Iran has been forced into silence and warns that any new development it will face further attacks. Now the claim intensifies tension in already fragile Middle East. Iran threatens retaliation, denies immediate war. That's right. Iran calls Trump's statement psychological warfare and dismisses the threat as propaganda. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei emphasizes a spiritual and information war rather than a military confrontation here. Nuclear negotiations remain stuck, heightening uncertainty in the entire region. Trump is saying that Iran is very desperate for a deal. That's right, US President insists that Iran is secretly seeking negotiations to lift the sanctions after the US strikes. He frames the situation as a power-driven path to regional peace. Here, observers question whether this is a strategy or a campaign rhetoric. United States seizes a Venezuelan oil tanker. Well, a ghost tanker carrying IRGC-linked oil is seized in international waters by the US authorities. Washington claims the operation disputed illicit Iranian oil network. Well, this particular move signals escalation against Maduro regime. Putin calls Maduro amid the rising US pressure. Vladimir Putin, he reassures Venezuela of Russia's support after the US actions in the Caribbean. Energy deals and strategic projects remain intact. Now the call, it signals a coordinated resistance to Washington's influence. Russia and Venezuela forge new axes. The leaders discuss expanding coordination in oil, defense, and finance. Moscow positioned itself as a counterweight to the US dominance in the Western Hemisphere. Well, the Caribbean emerges as a strategic power zone. Iran unveils Sayyad-4 electronic warfare system. Iran claims that Sayyad-4 can disrupt the US bombers and Israeli stealth jets. Well, the system is developed entirely by women scientists. Can you imagine that? Signaling technological innovation and national pride. Well, the reveal heightened regional military tension. Sayyad-4 is a strategic message to Washington. That's right, Iran emphasizes that systems timing amid rising tensions. It shows readiness and technological progress without actual battlefield proof. Well, the move strengthens Tehran's bargaining position in global perception. Israel demands total Hamas disarmament. Israel rejects Hamas's temporary weapon seize proposal, insisting on complete disarmament. Here, officials stress that partial measures are insufficient for lasting peace. The ceasefire's stability is now in big question. Hamas considers disarmament unacceptable and equals it with defeat. Tensions rise under the fragile ceasefire. In the meantime, both the sides appear locked onto conflicting red lines. Netanyahu signals the next phase in Gaza. Israel hints at troop redeployments and potential international stabilization force. Plans may include new political and security arrangements for Gaza. Here, Hamas resists the foreign presence inside the territory. United States targets shadow oil network linked to IRGC. Authorities seize a secret vessel moving Iranian oil illicitly. Well, the operation disrupts Tehran's financial backbone and sanction-busting mechanism. The public announcement serves as a warning. Well, sanctions hit Maduro's family and oil tankers. The US blacklists 3 nephews of Venezuela's First Lady and 6 large oil vessels. Now, these measures, they aim to choke Maduro's revenue stream. Washington signals a new aggressive chapter against Maduro's regime. Turkmenistan hosts rare summit of the regional heavyweights. Putin, Erdogan, and Iranian leaders gather to mark Turkmenistan's neutrality anniversary. Well, the summit is strategic and not any ceremonial, signaling new alliances in Central Asia. Gas-rich Turkmenistan becomes a focal point for the power game. Turkmenistan's dynastic rule. the country remains under family-led governance with absolute control. Golden status and cult-like displays, they mark the ruling dynasty's influence. In fact, isolation and neutrality define both governance and foreign policy. Turkmenistan's environmental paradoxes. Despite vast natural gas reserves, water scarcity, it threatens the agriculture. In fact, the Karakum Desert and burning Darwaza crater highlights ecological challenges, climate stress. It is growing alongside the geopolitical significance. Trump proposes new global super club, C5, a plan for 5 nations, core 5 bloc, including the US, China, Russia, India, and Japan. Well, the initiative sidelines Europe and challenges traditional G7 and G20 structures. It focuses on military power, population, and strategic influence. C5 could reshape global alliances here. Europe fears exclusion, NATO questions its role, and Western unity may fracture. While the bloc elevates authoritarian and populist nations while reducing democratic influence, the global power balance could shift, and that too dramatically. United States tightens visa rule for Indian travelers. Birth tourism is strictly targeted with visa rejections for the suspected hidden intentions. H-1B and H-4 applicants face stricter checks starting December 15th. The travelers must declare their purpose clearly just to avoid the instant denial. The United States warns against hidden travel intentions. American officials emphasize transparency and honesty for all the travelers. Now here, any mismatch or any vague plan, it may result in immediate refusal. Indian families and students, they are directly impacted by these new protocols. Iran claims that Washington is squeezing its diplomats through restrictions on movement, banking, and daily activities. 3 mission staff, they are barred from work, sparking speculations about political interference. In the meantime, the UN is called to intervene. United States-Iran diplomatic pressure escalates. Well, restrictions at the UN mark a non-military approach to influence Iran. The backdrop includes failed nuclear negotiations and prior airstrikes. In fact, both sides leverage soft power just to maintain the strategic advantage. Houthi detained Yemen staff linked to the US mission. The US condemns arrest as politically motivated and incorrect. And in the meantime, detentions highlight the danger that is faced by local collaboration with the foreign entities. Washington demands immediate and unconditional release. Dozens of UN personnel held by Houthis. At least 59 Yemeni UN staff, they are already been detained. The pattern shows a very systematic attempt to control interactions with the outside world. Humanitarian operations face increasing hurdles. Yemen's ongoing war complicates diplomacy. That's right, conflict since 2014 has created humanitarian crisis and fractured governance. Local cooperation with international mission is treated as a loyalty test by the Houthis. Pressure from Washington and the UN seeks to counter this strategy. Middle East on the edge as US-Iran tensions rise. Both the sides issue daily warning with nuclear program threats and psychological strategies here. The standoff risks escalation amid the stalled negotiations. Well, the regional actor watch very carefully for the next move. Iran signals readiness to counter the US threat. Sayat 4 and public display emphasize technological advancement and deterrence. Tehran communicates that it is capable and unafraid. Well, this particular narrative strengthens Iran's strategic posture. Venezuela's oil and family network under siege. Seizures and sanctions hit Maduro's family and key financial decisions as well. And in the meantime, the US aims to dismantle illicit networks funding regime survival. Pressure combines economic, diplomatic, and operational measures. Turkmenistan summit highlights energy and geopolitics. Neutral Turkmenistan becomes a hub for regional power discussion. Energy routes and alliances are the central topic here. Well, this particular summit underscores the country's strategic leverage despite the isolation. Let's talk about the global watch here. Escalation, alliances, power shift. From the Caribbean to the Middle East and Central Asia, the world faces a series of high-stakes flashpoints. US, Russia, China, and Iran. In fact, all the regional powers maneuver for advantage here. Diplomacy, sanctions, and military posturing create a tension and unpredictable global landscape as well. And with that, that's our 30 news bulletins from around the globe. From Gaza to Israel, from US to Venezuela, the world is changing and so is geopolitics. And TimesXP is here to give you all the updates that matters the most. I am Driti Atri. See you on Monday.